many worlds of the Caped Crusader. I've spent a lot of time over the last few months talking about the weekly grind of what's going on inside Batman continuity, which is probably the thing I enjoy talking about the most because it's just kind of a fun weekly soap opera. I really just enjoy talking about it with you guys, giving you the play-by-play. But once in a while, it's nice to kick back and see what other Batman stuff DC's putting out, because obviously there's a lot of stuff out there. So this will be the first of hopefully more episodes in this format. They just won't happen all the time. Just when it is kind of relevant, I thought this week would be a great opportunity for an inaugural episode like this. Because in the month of December, we actually had 3 different mini-series outside of regular Batman continuity wrap up their runs. So I thought I would talk about those with you guys today. Before I get into those 3 issues, I also wanted to give a little bit of a shout out for a special that came out a couple of months ago. I showed it off when I got it, and I kind of said I was going to just throw it on the pile, and I wasn't sure when I was going to get to it. Now that special is Batman the Audio Adventures, a book that I picked up on a whim, really just for the cover, the old-timey radio, the lightning. It just had that cool RKO vibe to it, and I thought, what the heck, why not? This is a lead-in to the audio adventures, which are on HBO Max. In full transparency, I'm only actually about halfway through it. It's not your typical Batman fare. Like, it doesn't fall into the camp category, and it doesn't fall into, like, dark brooding category. It's somewhere in this weird middle ground. And this comic book does a great job capturing it. This is written by a whole slew of different writers. I believe all of whom are people who worked on the audio adventures that are on HBO. And then you've got a whole gamut of artists that do, in my opinion, really great work. Again, not necessarily like your typical Batman, but a lot of really creative art in this nonetheless. Sort of Batman animated series, a little bit Darwin Cook, like, you know, just sort of heightened cartoonism. This book, like the show, basically just features a lot of little story vignettes. Jack Ryder talks about what's going on today in Gotham City. Basically, it slowly kind of builds a story that happens over time. I really like this bottom panel with Batman breaking through the glass there. I really enjoy kind of the lighting against his costume in that panel. But basically, like, you get these little short story vignettes, and over time, you get a sense of, like, what's going on in the city. Riddler's got stuff going on, Joker's got stuff going on, and Batman and Robin are, like, out taking care of business, and slowly but surely all these different interconnected sort of half plots kind of come into play. There's kind of a sense of cynical humor kind of peppered throughout it, but Batman himself is kind of played straight. If anything, he's sort of serious to the point that it's kind of funny in and of itself, but they don't take it to, like, cartoonish levels. Jeffrey Wright plays Batman in this, and he does a really, really good job as the voice. And actually, huge shout out to the cast of the actual audio program. They got a ton of heavy hitters: Rosario Dawson, John Leguizamo, many more. I think Paul Scheer. So yeah, lots of people working on this, and it creates like a pretty great, entertaining listen. And again, the comic book that comes with it really captures that well. And again, it's a prequel, so it does actually lead into the events of the audio drama. Because the basic conceit of the audio drama is basically Batman's becoming a deputized member of the law, and this is sort of the run-up to when he's fully deputized. So, it's fun. Okay, with that mention out of the way, I'm going to talk about the 3 mini-series that I've been picking up that just wrapped up in the month of December, ordering these least favorite to most favorite. Coming in at the bottom spot for me is Batman the Detective. This just finished up this month. I think part of the reason this one suffers a little bit is the fact that it hasn't had a super consistent release schedule. I want to say this started way back in like April, and it's had a couple months where it's skipped, and so it just takes a little while to kind of get back into the story, and I do have to go back and reread it all now that it's finished. I meant to do that before doing this video, and I just haven't quite had enough time. There's definitely stuff to like in this. Front and center is the artwork by Andy Hubert, and I have really fond memories of when he was on the book with Grant Morrison when they were first introducing Damian Wayne. And so that alone was kind of enough for me to give this series a try. And when it was kicking off, like, I really had a good time with it. I think I reviewed this originally when I was doing my full DC Universe review when Infinite Frontier was just getting started. And I have great things to say about this. I really liked it. This is like a Frank Miller Batman, basically. But then there's an element of like Batman Incorporated baked in because it takes place in Europe and you have Knight and Squire there. The core premise I found to be pretty lackluster. So like the concept of the book is that Batman is facing off against a villain that's going around and killing everyone he's ever saved. The villain is called Equilibrium, and they dress like Batman except all in white as opposed to Batman being all in black. In concept, like, I don't mind that. Like, I think it was an exciting opening to a story for sure. The question is, what can you really do with that story? And I found that as I got further into this, the sort of Frank Miller Batman shtick kind of started to wear a little thin. In issues 4 and 5, we really get a sense of who Equilibrium is and where they're headed. So here's issue 4, and then in issue 5, you find out that Equilibrium is someone who basically was victimized when Batman saved London. So it's revealed that the plot is Equilibrium's ultimate goal is to blow up London because there was one time in the past when Batman stopped London from getting blown up. And the whole reason that Equilibrium is upset is because her husband had gotten caught in the crossfire somehow or was like killed in London, despite the fact that he had ultimately saved the day. And so that's like the justification for her committing mass genocide is like, well, Batman didn't save my husband, and so now I'm going to kill everyone Batman's ever saved because that's just not fair. And it's, it's a comic booky idea, I guess, but it just, I don't know. I think Tom Taylor's a better writer than that. Issue number 6, I finally sat down and read last night. In this, all the cards are kind of on the table. Ultimately, Batman uses, a computer, pushes a bunch of buttons, and basically causes the drones to turn against Equilibrium, and he kind of saves the day, and then it's just a matter of taking Equilibrium out. There is a nice conclusion to this. I will give it credit, in which Ducard is going to kill Equilibrium, which Batman stops, and then Equilibrium recognizes that technically Batman saved her, and so she goes to kill herself to create balance, which I thought was kind of a good moment and a nice payoff. And then, of course, what really kicks it over the top is Batman stops it at the last second. Shatters every bone in his hand, but she's still alive, and he sort of saved the day yet again. I thought that was a really nice ending to this, but ultimately, just as a whole, this didn't hold my interest as much as I thought it was going to. I think part of it was it had a great first issue, and then it just sags and continues to sag, and then gets a little ridiculous. You find out the big reveal, and for me, the big reveal didn't do anything. It was disappointing, and so then that led to just kind of like, why did I read this? So if you love the art, I mean, it's worth the pickup for the art alone. If you like Tom Taylor, maybe give it a read. But otherwise, for me, this is probably ultimately a pass. I wouldn't necessarily recommend Batman the Detective. Okay, so for the 3 minis that wrapped up in the month of December, the book that is my runner-up is Batman the Imposter. I thought this was a really interesting read. So, the big gimmick with this one is that it's written by the guy who is writing the new Batman movie coming out with Robert Pattinson. That's a movie that I'm excited for. I'm not, honestly chomping at the bit to see it, which, as a Batman fan, probably sacrilege, I guess, but it just kind of feels a little bit more of the same. I would really like to see them take the cinema Batman in a different direction, because the last 3 now have been kind of the down and dirty, realistic-ish, dark, brooding Dark Knight character. Frankly, I just want to see him put Robin in a movie again. Like, you can do something a little bit more lighthearted, but still make it serious. I think Batman the Animated Series proved that, and I would love to see something a little bit more with that tone. I am excited for the new movie in the sense that we're going to get to see a lot of different sort of key Batman villains in kind of a fully realized Gotham City, which we haven't really seen before. We got close with the Nolan movies, but it took 3 movies to kind of even get there. Whereas this, they're kind of putting it all on the table right away, which I'm excited for. But I will say, having read this, this made me more excited for the movie than I was before I had read this. It's not really clear if this is technically tying into the movies. It'll be interesting to see after the movie comes out if there's any sort of crosstalk there. But I will say, Matt Tomlin knows how to write Batman. And the way that he structures this story, I think, is really interesting. Basically, this is like juggling a few different characters, all kind of dealing with this Batman that's on the scene, and what it sort of means for them, what it means for the city, and how they kind of cope with that, I guess. I think the highlight of this book is definitely the portrayal of Leslie Tompkins, who's a major player in this. As opposed to previous versions of Leslie Tompkins, she's not played as much like someone who patches Bruce Wayne up or will take in lost strays that, Batman brings in. She's sort of Bruce Wayne's social worker. In a sense, he's on probation in this, and she's his probation officer, because she's threatening to turn him in for the fact that he's Batman. She's figured it out, and she thinks he should be held accountable like everybody else. But instead of turning him in, she decides to work with him. And so she sort of keeps him grounded as he's investigating what is basically a Batman imposter story. It's exactly what the title sounds like. But ultimately, for me, the plot itself in this was almost secondary. It was more about Batman, Leslie Tompkins, and a detective that Batman works with in this, and seeing how each of them are dealing with these various different situations they find themselves in while they're investigating the case. So by the time you get to issue 3, which came out this month, Batman's basically on the run. This imposter has been killing people throughout Gotham City. Everyone thinks Batman's a killer now. And this 3rd issue, I thought, did a great job bringing this story home. While the first 2 issues are very focused on character, all the different little threads that they've woven together in the first 2 issues really come to a head when all of these characters kind of come into conflict from the beginning of the book to the end. You get to see a fantastic chase in this, in which Batman comes face to face with the imposter, and he has to employ some different strategies because he realizes early on that the imposter is actually stronger than he is, and he basically barely escapes with his life, and he immediately finds himself caught by the police. So he has to escape from that immediately afterwards, which leads to a great chase throughout the city, which they do an awesome job setting that up too, because they've established this earlier version of Batman has motorcycles hidden throughout the city, but he also has zip lines all over town, and he has a lot of different ways of traversing, some of which have been raided, some of which have not been raided, that he's able to attempt to leverage as he's trying to make his getaway. And you can actually see like his map of his zipline network actually right there, which is kind of cool. And now, of course, the chase isn't over. Once he gets away from the cops, he's gotten away from the Batman imposter, he's caught and shot by the detective who's been on his trail, and is the 3rd major character we've been following over the course of the first 2 issues as well. And so you have a great interaction between the 2 of them, and her having to decide, is Batman someone who needs to be my ally, or is he someone who needs to truly be taken in? And she then has to make that choice, which they've been setting up for the first 2 issues as well. Throughout the book, just fantastic art by Andrea Sorrentino. The only complaint that I have is towards the very end, the layouts do get a little bit confusing. At least they did for me. I read this a few times and I still am not entirely clear on how everything played out. It's one of those when you have two different Batmans dressed the same, and then you have the detective and Batman and the imposter, all of whom are injured. It's kind of hard to get all of the visual cues. It gets just a little bit muddled at the very end. But that's really the only misstep, and it happens after 2.5 issues of Sorrentino absolutely nailing the layouts and the art in this. All right, so easily my favorite miniseries of the year, to be honest. Happened to wrap up this month and easily took my #1 spot of my favorite miniseries that have been going over the course of the last half now of 2021. And it's probably not a surprise. I sing its praises every time I pick it up. Batman Reptilian, absolutely firing on all cylinders from beginning to end. My understanding of this story is it was originally supposed to have been a Legends of the Dark Knight story. And I don't know if this was supposed to be for Volume 2 or Volume 1 or like what the actual timeline of that was. And you definitely feel it when you read this book. Like if you know what Legends of the Dark Knight was like back in the day, this fits that format almost perfectly. You have the 6-issue story with a unique take on Batman and a unique period in his career, with an all-star artist-writer team-up. I mean, that was like the bread and butter of a lot of those early Legends of the Dark Knights, and that philosophy is definitely on display in Batman Reptilian. If you guys haven't checked them out yet, Comic Collector, or The Comic Collector, is doing a whole bunch of videos going through all of the Legends of the Dark Knight, like a complete history of that series, sort of arc by arc. Fantastic stuff. They're short little videos in which he just kind of teases you and tells you why you should go check it out or skip it, and gives you just kind of the briefest overview, but then shows it off and lets you kind of see what it's all about. If you haven't subbed him up, go check him out. He's doing great Batman content, great content in general. A part of me is a little sad that this wasn't in Legends of the Dark Knight, just because I long for that combination, all those things in one place together again, like the old days. But that's okay. DC Black Label is a completely fine place to put a story like this. So much like with Batman the Detective, I was immediately sold on this book based on the art. Liam Sharp does beautiful painted covers and interiors for this, that are really jaw-dropping. They're just a little bit surreal when you look at them, but they do a fantastic job really broadcasting story and emotion through the color and sort of the abstract images that you're kind of processing as you're going through and reading these stories. And it fits the tone and personality of the Batman that Garth Ennis is writing in this, because he is no holds barred, vindictive a-hole is probably the best way to describe Batman in this. But then you also get that detective side of Batman. A large part of this book is Batman just tracing different threads of there's something out there. It's killing various high-profile Gotham villains, and he has to put the pieces together. It's something that appears to be Reptilian, but that's all he really knows. And he's going through finding all these different people. There's something that links all these people together. And the key is finding out what that is, and that leads him to what the ultimate solution is. Issue 2 and 3, he slowly pieces together that all of these people were at like a villains conference or party or something. It's been a little bit since I've read these issues. I probably should have done a reskim just to remember exactly how that was set up. But basically all these people were together in one place at the same time. So that's kind of the common denominator. And the thing that like really puts this book over the top is when you find out why all of these people have been marked to be killed and what it really means. It all revolves around Killer Croc as he starts sort of realizing in book 3. And when you get to issue 4, which is my favorite issue, Batman finally catches up with Killer Croc, and Killer Croc is in kind of an unusual situation, we'll say, and Batman explains to him exactly what's been going on and how he's responsible and why. I'm tempted to spoil it here, but it is one of the best twists I've read in a Batman book in a long time. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Kind of the exact opposite of Batman the Detective, where it just felt a little played out. This book was jaw-dropping. So once the big reveal happened in issue 4, I actually waited for issue 5 and 6 to come out so I could go through and give both of these a read together, which I did last night. And I mean, again, consistently great quality. You get the final conflict between Batman, this new reptilian creature, and Killer Croc. He's leveraging this poor goon that happens to be someone that was at this party and is therefore also marked for death, but is like comparatively innocent, or at least is sort of portrayed more innocently than the others. And he's constantly texting back and forth with Batman, accusing him that he's just using him as bait, which makes for some great sort of dialogue. Again, in this, Batman is a vindictive a-hole, and he plays it to the nines in a way it's funny, but it's also like, I mean, he's pretty much evil in this. Like, he's not a superhero. Like, this is not a superhero book at all. Now, of course, it's Batman, so at the end he's got to do something ridiculous, and the penultimate issue wraps up with him getting swallowed by the beast to save the day. And then in issue number 6, you get to find out how he manages to make his way out of that situation, save everyone in the process, and of course have a little bit of a vindictive I told you so at the very end, just to remind everybody how much of a jerk this Batman is. So technically just sort of a brief overview, but we did get through a lot of Batman books today. Definitely more than we would have done if it was your typical This Week in Batman. So thanks for sticking around and checking this out. All told, DC's doing some good stuff with Batman, both inside and outside continuity. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys have a great week in comics. Thanks for watching.